So now I want to talk with you about a process called kinesiology or muscle testing. The reason I want to talk to you about it is it's the way that we find out the deepest wisdom and the truth so we can find answers to our questions. So let me tell you what I mean. In order to talk about muscle testing, I have to talk about levels of wisdom, and we're going to talk about 4 levels of wisdom. The first level of wisdom is called the wisdom of the conscious mind. That's a level of wisdom that if I said to you, how much is 2 plus 2? You said, I can figure that out. The answer is 4. Or if I said, what's your name? You could say, I can figure that out. In my case, it would be, my name is Andy. But if I said to you, how come you're depressed and what should you do about it? You'd say, if I knew the answer to that question, I wouldn't be coming to see you. So what we can know is that the wisdom of the conscious mind is very limited. So we will arbitrarily give it the power of 1. And then there's a second level of wisdom. It's called the wisdom of the unconscious mind. The wisdom of the unconscious mind reveals itself through dreams or visions that come to you, or you say something, you say, I didn't mean to say that, or in a whole variety of other ways. What we would say is that either that wisdom doesn't exist or it has to be deeper than conscious wisdom, because if your conscious mind tries to make sense of a dream, it doesn't get very far. Now, I would say it's much deeper. I would say dreams or visions, or when you say something that you don't intend to say, it's really like a letter or a message from your soul. And I would say if your conscious mind has the wisdom that's the power of 1, the unconscious mind has the wisdom that we might say is the equivalent of the power of the speed of light. It's that much more powerful. And then there's a third level of wisdom. And the third level of wisdom does not have a lot of good words in the West, although we've incorporated or inherited some of them. In the East, if you're in China, it's called Qi, like in Tai Chi. Or if you're in Japan, it's called Ki, like Reiki. Or if you're in India, it's called Prana or Shakti. And if you're in Aboriginal cultures, they also have lots of words for it. The only place that actually doesn't have a lot of words for what this wisdom is the materialist West, because we have not actually believed that it exists. But that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, it just means we haven't had a word for it and we don't believe in it. There are 2 ways that we can know about this wisdom. The first way we can know about it is, have you ever just known something was true? It's not like you figured it out. It's not like you even had an emotion about it. You just said, I just know it's true for me. So it might be that you say, I know I have to marry this person, or I know that I have to go and do this life path, or I know I'm to move, or whatever it's going to be. And someone would say, that sounds crazy. And you say, well, it might be crazy from any rational perspective, but I know it's true for me and I have to follow it. So it's that kind of deepest intuition. The other way it shows up is you actually get a lot stronger when you're in alignment with this wisdom, and I'll tell you what I mean. Suppose you're a mother and you weigh 100 pounds, and God forbid, a car rolls over your toddler, and you have to pick up that car. 100-pound women could pick up 2,000-pound cars. They do it actually fairly frequently. Now, if you ask that woman, how could you do that? She'd say, I just knew I could do it. She just said, I just know. Now, if she tried to do it through her willpower, all she would get would be a broken back. But on this level of wisdom, you actually get way, way stronger, literally way stronger. And so on this level of wisdom, what we're going to do is we're going to ask your body to be a means of communication for the part of you that just knows the truth. And we're going to start asking questions. And when we start asking the question, for virtually everybody, if the answer is yes, they get very, very strong. And I could push on their arm with all my might and it would stay like steel. But if they said something that wasn't true for them, or wasn't in alignment with their truth, or they did something that wasn't in alignment with their truth, they would get very weak and they could try to use all their willpower to keep their arm up in this case, but they wouldn't be able to do it. And then we can ask anything we like. And as long as it's in the service of healing and evolving and highest good, we'll get very high vibrational answers. If we ask a question like, oh, I want to be greedy, so what are the answers to the lottery numbers? We'll get a very dense answer because we'll be asking a question from a very dense place. But as long as we're looking to get answers for your healing and the growth of your soul, we'll get very high vibrational answers, and then we can ask anything we want in the service of that. And we're really going to ask, with the muscle testing, 3 kinds of things. The first one is, what is the most important thing for you to work on out of everything we could discover? And it may be something you know, and if it isn't something you know, it may be something that I know, and we can ask, is it something you know or something you've said? And if it isn't, we can find out, even if it's something that you haven't said yet but you do know, and if you don't know it, we can find out if I know it, and I can even find out through the muscle testing what the most important thing to work on is, because what we've been doing in life-centered therapy is mapping out all of the universal themes in the universe that people might not be aware of, that we will talk about in our next talk, but nonetheless may be where they get stuck. So we're going to find out the most important thing for you to work on. And then what we're going to do is we're going to find out where this problem, this suffering originated. Because the place you have the most leverage is where something originates. It's like if you have a dandelion and you cut it off at the stem, you might eventually kill the dandelion, but it may keep growing back over and over and over again. But if you could take it out by the root, you've really resolved the whole thing. The whole thing has come into balance. And we're going to do the same thing for you. And the last thing we use it for typically, although we can use it for other things also, is to find out if whoever it is in the story, if they need something other than the most simple, powerful intervention or practice there is, which is to just bring your awareness to whatever your suffering or your trauma is. And that's the 3rd level of wisdom. Now, there's also a 4th level of wisdom that's important to know about, and that's infinite wisdom. Or to put it differently, that's why we could ask questions that you couldn't ever possibly know the answer to, or you wouldn't even know they existed, but nonetheless, they're available to you. And I'm going to tell you what I mean in this 4th level of wisdom. Because in the 4th level of wisdom, everything that has ever happened, is happening, and potentially could ever happen are all happening simultaneously. And in this level of wisdom, it's not that information has to travel, because everything is happening simultaneously. So let me give you 2 ways of understanding what this is about. There's a biological way and there is an energetic way. So we'll start with the biological way. And the biological way is the understanding of the relationship between cells and bodies. So it's a very, very interesting thing, because we have about 3 trillion cells. Actually, we have more if you count everything that's in our body. But for our purposes, we'll say we have about 3 trillion cells. Now, what we know about cells is something very, very interesting, which is we could theoretically, or so I've been told, study every cell that's in our body, and theoretically we would never find 2 that were exactly alike. So on that level, each cell is unique and separate. But we also know that on a whole other level, the cells must be on a different level exactly alike, because each has the same blueprint. Or to put it differently, theoretically, if you had enough information, you could take any cell and you could clone the whole body as it is right now. So that must mean that everything that is happening in that cell's universe, it has access to that information simultaneously. But of course, from a whole other level, if the cell was thinking about itself as unique, it would say that's impossible. And if you could see, if let's say I had a cell that was over here, right? And I had another cell that was over here, and this cell would say, I didn't even know this cell existed, because there's this big, big gap here, and like the universe is big, and like this thing is 70,000 light years away or whatever. But from our point of view, we would know they're all part of the same universe, and each one, whatever happens to one of them, is happening to the other one simultaneously. So it has all of the information that is or ever could be. It's already there. If you want a different example that's energetic, we have to go to holograms. Now, holograms are very interesting, because if you have a hologram, like a holographic plate, and you break it into trillions of pieces, each of the broken pieces theoretically will look different on the surface. But if you looked very deeply into each of them, you would find that each of them holds the whole plate. So that on the surface, they would all seem separate and limited and different. But underneath it, we would know that they all are unique versions of exactly the same thing. And what I want to suggest is that we are like mystical cells in a mystical body called life. So from our perspective, we might say that we're all limited and separate. And that would just be an illusion. Because what you could say is, each of us is life, every one of us is life, and each of us is in relationship with life. And that's why when we go to the template, we could ask any question we want. And as long as it's in the serving of the evolution of life itself, because life evolves through us, we'll get an answer. In our next video, we'll actually show a demonstration of muscle testing and what it looks like.